Your daughter doesn't need the wheelchair. She's just pretending to get attention." Daniel Morrison felt cold sweat trickling down his forehead as he pushed the pink wheelchair along the tree-lined path of Central Park. His daughter Emma, just 10 years old, remained silent, looking at the ground with an expression he couldn't decipher. 6 months ago, his life had been turned upside down, and today would be just another outing to try to cheer up the girl who had become the center of all his worries. That's when a boy in torn and dirty clothes appeared from behind a tree, pointing directly at them. He couldn't have been more than 12, his unkempt hair and bare feet indicating he lived on the streets. But there was something in his eyes that caught Daniel's attention, a determination that didn't match his fragile appearance. "Your daughter doesn't need the wheelchair," shouted the boy, causing several people in the park to turn and look. "She's just pretending to get attention." Daniel stopped abruptly, feeling as if he'd been punched in the stomach. Emma shrank in the chair, her small hands gripping the pink wheels so tightly her knuckles turned white. The world around them seemed to have frozen. The laughter of other children playing became a distant echo. "Who are you, boy?" Daniel managed to articulate, his voice coming out harsher than he intended. "How dare you say such a thing?" The boy took a few steps closer, keeping his finger pointed in Emma's direction. There were tears in his eyes, but also an anger Daniel couldn't understand. "My name is Ethan," said the boy, wiping his nose with the back of his dirty hand. "And I saw her running behind the school yesterday. I saw when she thought no one was looking." Daniel felt the ground move under his feet. For 6 months, since the terrible accident at home, Emma hadn't taken a single step. The doctors had confirmed the spinal injury. The tests showed damage that could be permanent. He had reorganized his entire company, cancelled international trips, lost important contracts, all to care for the only person who truly mattered in his life. "That's absurd," murmured Daniel, but his voice lacked conviction. "Emma had a serious accident. She faked the accident," interrupted Ethan, moving closer. "I live in the slum behind the school, sir. I see everything that happens there. Your daughter walks, runs, jumps when she thinks no one is watching." Emma finally looked up, and Daniel saw something that terrified him. There was no surprise on her face, only fear. It wasn't the fear of a child being falsely accused, but the fear of someone who had been found out. "Daddy," whispered Emma, her voice trembling. "Don't believe him. He's just a street kid making up stories." But Daniel knew his daughter better than anyone in the world. He had raised Emma alone since his wife died in a car accident 3 years ago. He knew when she was lying by the way her ears turned red, by the way she avoided his gaze. And at this moment, all the signs were there. "Emma," said Daniel, kneeling beside the wheelchair, "look me in the eyes and tell me the truth." The girl began to cry, thick tears rolling down her rosy cheeks. Around them, other families had stopped to watch the scene, some whispering among themselves, others discreetly filming with their cell phones. I can't, Daddy," sobbed Emma. "If I tell, you'll hate me." Ethan moved even closer, now within Daniel's reach. The businessman could see that the boy was also crying, but his tears seemed to come from a deeper place, from a pain Daniel couldn't fully comprehend. "Sir," said Ethan, his voice breaking, "I know what it's like to want a father's attention. My father left me when I was 5. My mother—" The boy stopped, swallowing hard. "My mother is gone too. I see your daughter at school every day. I see how sad she gets when you don't show up for the performances, when you don't come to pick her up." Daniel felt as if he'd been stabbed. How many performances had he missed? How many parent-teacher meetings had he delegated to the nanny? How many times had Emma asked him to stay home, and he'd said he was busy with important business? "I didn't want to tell you," Ethan continued, "but yesterday I saw you crying while you were pushing her chair. I saw how much you were suffering, and I thought maybe it was time someone told you the truth." Emma was sobbing now, her small body trembling in the wheelchair. Daniel picked her up, something he hadn't done in a long time, and held her against his chest. She didn't resist, didn't complain about her legs hurting like she always did whenever he tried to touch her. "Let's go home," Daniel murmured into his daughter's ear. "We'll talk at home." As he placed Emma back in the chair, Daniel looked at Ethan. The boy was walking away, hands in his pockets, shoulders hunched as if carrying the weight of the world. "Wait," Daniel called. "What's your name again?" "Ethan Morrison," the boy replied without turning around. "I live under the bridge on Broadway Avenue. If you need me to talk more about what I saw, just look for me there." And then he disappeared among the trees, leaving Daniel alone with Emma, and with a revelation that threatened to destroy everything he believed about the last 6 months of his life. On the way back home, a heavy silence settled between father and daughter. Daniel drove his black Audi through the busy streets of Phoenix, looking in the rearview mirror at Emma, who remained in the specially adapted wheelchair in the back seat of the car. Traffic was heavy that Thursday afternoon, but Daniel barely paid attention to the cars around him. His mind was racing with the words of the boy Ethan. Emma remained silent, nervously playing with the pink wheels of her chair. Daniel had chosen that color specifically because it was her favorite, had spent a fortune importing the equipment from Canada, wanting to make sure she had the best of everything. Now looking at those shiny wheels, he wondered if he had just been an instrument in his own daughter's charade. They arrived at the gated community where they lived, one of the most exclusive in the Scottsdale area. The doorman waved respectfully, as he always did, but Daniel noticed a different look, almost pitying. Did the whole neighborhood know about his situation? Did they talk about the successful businessman who had abandoned his business to care for his disabled daughter? Their apartment was on the 22nd floor, a penthouse with a panoramic view of the city. As the elevator rose, Daniel watched Emma in the elevator mirror. She kept her head down, her hands still gripping the wheels of the chair with unnecessary force. "Emma," Daniel said when the elevator doors opened, "we need to talk." He pushed the chair into the living room, a spacious, modern space that had been completely reorganized 6 months ago to accommodate his daughter's special needs. Ramps had been installed, furniture moved, the Persian rug his late wife had loved so much had been removed to make it easier for the wheelchair to move. "Sit on the sofa," said Daniel, his voice firmer now. "Daddy, you know I can't," Emma replied, without looking up. "Emma," Daniel knelt in front of the wheelchair, holding his daughter's small hands. "Look at me and tell me the truth. Can you walk?" The question hung in the air for long seconds. Emma finally raised her eyes, and Daniel saw there all the guilt, fear, and desperation of a child who had gotten lost in a lie bigger than herself. "Daddy," whispered Emma, her voice almost inaudible. "Please don't hate me." "I could never hate you," said Daniel, squeezing her hands. "But I need to know the truth. I need to understand what's happening." Emma began to cry again, silent tears that broke Daniel's heart. Slowly, very slowly, she began to move her legs, first just her toes, then her ankles, until she finally rose from the wheelchair and stood in front of her father. Daniel felt as if he had been electrocuted. His daughter was there, standing, perfectly capable of walking, after 6 months of pretending a paralysis he had never questioned. "Why?" was all he could say. Emma threw herself into her father's arms, sobbing uncontrollably. "Because you were never home," she cried between sobs. "Because you only paid attention to me when I was sick or hurt. Because I wanted you to stay with me. I wanted you to love me more than you loved your work." Daniel hugged her tightly, feeling the weight of guilt crushing his chest. How many times had Emma asked him to stay home? How many times had she tried to show him a drawing, tell him about school, asked to watch a movie together, and he had replied that he was busy? "I'm sorry, Daddy," Emma cried. "I didn't want to lie for so long. At first it was just so you'd stay home one day, but then you cancelled the trip to Europe and stopped going to the office every day. And I thought if I told the truth, you'd go back to ignoring me." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. Daniel held Emma's face between his hands, looking into the blue eyes that were identical to her mother's. "Emma, you never ever need to pretend to be hurt to get my attention. You are the most important person in my life, more important than any business or money." "But you always said you were busy," sobbed Emma. "There was always an important meeting, a trip you couldn't cancel." "I felt invisible, Daddy, like I didn't matter. Emma's words hit Daniel like well-aimed arrows. He remembered all the times he had promised to come home early and arrived late, all the times he had promised to take her to the movies on the weekend and ended up working, all the times she had tried to talk to him and he was answering emails on his phone. "How did you plan the accident?" asked Daniel, still trying to process the magnitude of the situation. Emma wiped her tears with the back of her hand, still trembling. "I researched spinal injuries online," she said, her voice ashamed. "I read about symptoms, about how people got hurt. When you left for that important meeting on Saturday morning, I set everything up." "Set up how?" "I scattered some toys on the stairs, threw myself on the floor, bumped my head lightly against the wall to get a bump. And when you came home, I was there pretending I couldn't move." Daniel remembered that day clearly. He had returned from a meeting that dragged on for hours, finding Emma fallen at the bottom of the stairs, crying desperately, saying her legs wouldn't obey. The rush to the hospital, the tests, the despair upon hearing the doctors talk about a possible spinal cord injury. "The doctors," Daniel began. "I studied a lot, Daddy," interrupted Emma. "I knew exactly how to react during the exams. When they asked me to move my legs, I didn't move. When they tested my reflexes, I didn't react. When they asked questions about pain, I knew exactly how to answer." Daniel was impressed and horrified at the same time. His 10-year-old daughter had orchestrated a medical hoax so convincing it had fooled renowned specialists. "And school? Ethan said he saw you running." Emma lowered her head again. "After classes, when everyone was leaving, I'd ask Mrs. Dorothy, the cleaning lady, to leave me in the courtyard. I said I wanted to be alone for a little while. That's when I took the chance to be myself again. Ethan must have seen me during one of those moments. Mrs. Dorothy had been the school cleaning lady for over 20 years, a woman beloved by all the children." Daniel imagined Emma asking for those moments of privacy, pretending she needed some time alone to deal with the disability, when in truth she was desperate to be a normal child again. "Emma," said Daniel, his voice heavy with emotion, "do you have any idea what went through my head these past 6 months? The despair I felt thinking you would never walk again, never run, never play like a normal child." "I knew you were suffering," whispered Emma. "I saw you crying when you thought I was asleep. But I was so scared to tell the truth, scared that you'd find out I was a horrible liar and stop loving me." Daniel pulled Emma into another hug, this time even tighter. "I would never stop loving you. Never, ever in my life. You are my daughter, Emma, You could do anything and I would always, always love you, but what we did was very wrong." They stayed embraced for several minutes, father and daughter finally being honest with each other for the first time in months. Daniel thought about the implications of it all, the doctors who had been deceived, the health insurance that had spent thousands of dollars on unnecessary tests and treatments, the friends and family who had offered support and prayers for a condition that never existed. "What are we going to do now, Daddy?" asked Emma, still nestled in her father's arms. "First, we are going to talk a lot, a whole lot. You are going to tell me about every day you felt ignored, about every time you wanted my attention and couldn't get it. And I am going to tell you about how lost I felt after your mother died, about how I thought working hard was the only way to secure a safe future for you. And then? Then we'll figure out how to fix this situation. The doctors need to know, the school needs to be informed, and we both need to learn to communicate better from now on." Emma pulled back a little to look at her father's face. "Are you going to travel a lot again? Are you going to ignore me again?" Daniel held his daughter's face again. "Emma, I solemnly promise that you will never, ever have to pretend to be sick to get my attention again. I promise I will be present in your life, not just physically, but truly present. I promise you will always be my #1 priority. Do you really promise?" "I promise with all my heart." That night, for the first time in 6 months, Emma slept in her own bed, not in the adapted hospital bed they had installed in her room. Daniel sat in an armchair beside the bed, just watching his daughter sleep, trying to process everything he had discovered. He thought about the boy Ethan, who had had the courage to expose a painful truth. He thought about the signs he himself had missed, the wasted opportunities for real connection with his daughter. He thought about the wife he had lost 3 years ago, and how she always said the most important things in life were the simple family moments. Around 2 in the morning, Emma woke up and found her father still in the armchair. "Daddy, aren't you going to sleep?" "I was just watching you sleep," said Daniel, "thinking about how lucky I am to have such a smart daughter, even if she used that smarts in a way that got us into trouble." Emma gave a timid smile. "Daddy, can I ask you something?" "Of course, anything." "Do you think Mommy would be mad at me for what I did?" Daniel felt his eyes fill with tears. Emma rarely spoke about her mother, and when she did, it was always with a mix of longing and guilt, as if she were somehow responsible for not preventing the accident. "Your mother would be sad that you felt so alone you thought you needed to lie," said Daniel. "But she would understand why you did it, and she would be proud that you had the courage to tell the truth. Do you think she's watching us now?" "I'm sure she is. And I'm sure she's happy because we're finally talking for real, being honest with each other." Emma got out of bed and snuggled into her father's lap in the armchair. "Daddy, can I sleep here with you?" "Of course you can." They fell asleep together in the armchair, for the first time in years sleeping in the same room, for the first time in months with no lies between them. But Daniel knew the next day would bring enormous challenges. They would have to deal with the consequences of the deception, with the difficult explanations, with the process of rebuilding trust. The next morning, Daniel woke up with a terrible pain in his neck from sleeping in the armchair, but with a heart lighter than he had felt in months. Emma was still sleeping in his lap, breathing peacefully without the tension she had carried for so long. The first challenge of the day would be talking to Rachel, the nanny who had been caring for Emma for almost 2 years. Rachel had been a constant presence during Emma's supposed recovery, helping with special care, accompanying her to medical appointments, being a bridge between father and daughter when communication failed. When Emma woke up, they had breakfast together for the first time in a long while without rushing, without Daniel constantly looking at his phone or talking about work commitments. "Emma," said Daniel as he spread jam on his daughter's bread, "today we're going to talk with Rachel, and then we're going to the hospital to talk with Dr. Richard. Are you ready?" Dr. Richard Thompson was the neurologist who had followed Emma's case from the beginning, a renowned professional who had dedicated himself intensely to the case, even consulting international colleagues about the specifics of Emma's injury. "I'm scared, Daddy," admitted Emma. "Doctor, Richard was always so kind to me. Is he going to be really angry when he finds out I lied to him?" "He'll be disappointed," said Daniel honestly. "But doctors are used to complex situations. The important thing is that now we're going to be completely honest with him." Rachel arrived promptly at 9 o'clock, as she always did. She was a woman of about 40, divorced, who had dedicated herself intensely to Emma's care. When Daniel opened the door, she immediately noticed something different. "Good morning, Mr. Daniel. How was Emma's night? Is she—" Rachel stopped talking when she saw Emma walking through the living room without the wheelchair, moving normally. "Rachel," said Daniel, "we need to talk. Please sit down." The explanation was painful. Rachel alternated between disbelief, relief, and contained anger. She had dedicated months of her life to unnecessary special care, had cancelled personal commitments to accompany medical appointments, had studied about disability care to better serve Emma. "I knew," Rachel finally said, surprising both Daniel and Emma. "Or rather, I suspected." "What do you mean?" asked Daniel. "Some things didn't add up," explained Rachel. "Emma always seemed more cheerful when you were around, more depressed when she was alone with me. And once, when she thought I had left the house, I heard her walking in the hallway. When I returned, she was in the chair, but there was something different in the way she looked at me." Emma started to cry. "Why didn't you tell my father?" "Because I understood," said Rachel, her voice gentle. "I was also a child, starved for my parents' attention. My father worked so much he barely knew I existed. I understood her need for attention, even if I disagreed with the methods." "You should have told me," said Daniel. "Maybe," admitted Rachel, "but I saw how you were changing, how you were becoming more present. I saw Emma happy to have her father nearby, even if it was for the wrong reasons. I thought maybe it was better to let you find your own way." The conversation with Rachel revealed other disturbing things. She told of the times Emma cried alone in her room, about the drawings she always made showing an absent father, about the constant questions about when Daniel would return from his trips. "She made lists," revealed Rachel. "Lists of things she wanted to do with you. Movies, park, mall, zoo. She kept these lists in a little box under the bed, along with magazine clippings showing fathers and daughters doing things together." Daniel asked to see those lists. He went up to Emma's room with her, and together they opened the little box he had never noticed. Inside were dozens of papers with Emma's careful handwriting, things to do with Daddy when he's not busy. The most recent list, dated just days before the accident, had over 20 activities: watch a movie, make popcorn, play memory game, read a bedtime story, go to the park, bake a cake together, talk about Mommy. "Emma," said Daniel, his voice choked with emotion, "why did you never show me these lists?" "Because you always said you were busy," she replied. "I thought if you saw the list you'd feel pressured, you'd get mad at me for wanting so much of your time." Each item on that list was like a stab to Daniel's heart. Simple things, activities any father should naturally do with his daughter, but which he had neglected in the name of meetings and contracts that now seemed completely insignificant. "Starting today," said Daniel, holding the most recent list, "we are going to do all of this. Every item on this list, and on all the others you want to write. Do you really promise?" "I promise. And more. You can write new lists whenever you want. If you feel like doing something with me, you don't need to wait or be afraid of bothering me. You just need to tell me." They spent the rest of the morning talking about each list, about each drawing kept in the little box. Daniel discovered a universe of his daughter's emotional needs that had gone completely unnoticed. Emma had documented her longing with the precision of a scientist, cataloguing every time she felt ignored, every unkept promise, every moment she wished for a more present father. In the afternoon, they went to the hospital to speak with Dr. Richard. The neurologist received them in his office, a professional yet welcoming environment filled with diplomas and medical books. When Emma walked in normally, Dr. Richard was initially euphoric. "Emma, this is wonderful. When did you start regaining movement? Why didn't you call me immediately?" The explanation was even more embarrassing than it had been with Rachel. Dr. Richard went through several stages: disbelief, confusion, disappointment, and finally a professional understanding of the situation. "In 25 years of medicine," Dr. Richard finally said, "I have never faced a situation like this. Emma, do you have any idea how convincing your act was? You made me question my own knowledge, consult international specialists, research extremely rare conditions." "I'm so sorry, doctor," whispered Emma. "I didn't mean to deceive you. I just wanted my father to stay with me." Dr. Richard turned to Daniel. "Mr. Morrison, I need you to understand the seriousness of this situation. From a medical standpoint, this constitutes fraud against the healthcare system. Unnecessary tests were performed. Appointment slots that could have been used by patients who genuinely needed them were occupied. Resources were wasted on useless treatments." "Doctor, I take full responsibility," said Daniel. "I am willing to cover all the costs of the tests and appointments. I only ask that you consider the emotional circumstances involved before taking any legal action." Dr. Richard was silent for several minutes, observing Emma, who was clearly terrified of possible legal consequences. "Emma," the doctor finally said, "look at me. What you did was very wrong, but I understand why you did it. I have seen many truly sick children, and I know how desperate it is when we can't get the attention of those we love. Do you forgive me?" "I forgive you, but you must promise never to lie about being sick or hurt again. Lies about health can have very serious consequences." "I promise, doctor, never again." Dr. Richard turned to Daniel again. "Mr. Morrison, I will prepare a full report on the situation for the hospital and the health insurance plan. I recommend you seek psychological help to deal with the underlying issues that led to this situation, and I will suggest that all costs be reimbursed, as you offered. Of course, doctor, whatever is necessary." "There is one more thing," continued Dr. Richard. "You need to understand that situations like this can shake the trust in the doctor-patient relationship. Other professionals who followed the case will feel deceived. This may have repercussions beyond what you imagine. Indeed, in the following weeks, Daniel discovered just how far the repercussions of Emma's deception had reached. The physical therapist who had worked with her twice a week felt his professionalism questioned. The school had implemented special accessibility programs thinking of Emma's case. Family friends had organized charity raffles to help with treatment costs. The community in their condominium had mobilized to make small renovations to the common areas to facilitate Emma's access. The building manager, Mrs. Margaret, a 65-year-old woman who had always been very kind to Emma, was deeply shaken when she learned the truth. "Mr. Morrison," said Mrs. Margaret when he went to see her to explain the situation, "I have a granddaughter Emma's age. When I heard about her accident, I thought about how devastating it would be if that happened to my granddaughter. I mobilized the entire condominium. We organized donations, we made renovations." "Mrs. Margaret, I take full responsibility for the costs of the renovations," interrupted Daniel. "I know I can't undo the embarrassment, but I can at least reimburse the expenses." "It's not about the money," she said sadly. "It's about trust. It's about how a lie can affect an entire community that genuinely wanted to help." This conversation made Daniel realize that the consequences of Emma's deception extended far beyond their family. Dozens of people had been emotionally affected. Professionals had questioned their competence. Community resources had been wasted. That night, he talked with Emma about these wider repercussions. "Emma, do you understand that it wasn't just our family that was affected by your lie?" "What do you mean, Dad?" "Many people were sad thinking you were suffering. Many people spent money trying to help you. Doctors were confused, thinking they didn't know how to do their jobs properly." Emma began to cry again. "I didn't think about that, Dad. I just wanted you to spend more time with me." "I know, sweetheart, and I understand why you did it. But now we need to take responsibility for the consequences and try to fix what we can." It was at that moment that Daniel made a decision that would completely change the direction of his life. He decided he would sell his share in the company and dedicate himself entirely to rebuilding his relationship with Emma and repairing the damage caused by the deception. Daniel's company, an international logistics consultancy, had been built over 15 years of intense work. It was his source of professional and financial pride, but it had also been the cause of the emotional neglect that led Emma to desperation. "Emma," said Daniel a few days later, "Dad is going to sell the company." "Why?" "Because that's where all the pressure that kept me away from you came from. Without the company, I can dedicate myself entirely to being the father you deserve to have." "But Dad, won't you be sad without work?" "I will work, but I'll work in a way that allows me to always be present in your life. Maybe teaching, maybe doing consulting on a flexible schedule, maybe writing. The important thing is that you'll never have to compete with work for my attention again." Emma was silent for a moment. "Dad, what if you regret it? What if you get angry at me for making you give up the company?" Daniel knelt in front of his daughter, holding her hands. "Emma, listen carefully to what I'm going to tell you. The company can be rebuilt, money can be recovered. But the time we lost together, the moments I let pass, that never comes back. You are more important than any professional success." "Are you sure?" "Absolutely." The process of selling the company was complex, but Daniel was determined. His partners initially resisted, arguing that he was making a rash emotional decision. Some clients questioned his emotional stability, but Daniel remained firm in his decision. During this period, he also looked for the boy Ethan. He took Emma with him and they went to the bridge on Broadway Avenue, where Ethan had said he lived. They found the boy on a rainy afternoon, sheltered under the concrete structure, sharing a piece of bread with 2 stray dogs. "Ethan!" called Daniel, approaching carefully. The boy looked up, surprised to see them. "Hi, Mr. Morrison. Hi, Emma." Emma was visibly uncomfortable, facing for the first time the reality of the poverty of the boy who had exposed her lie. He was wearing the same torn clothes from days before, clearly hadn't bathed in a long time, and looked thinner than she remembered. "Ethan," said Daniel, I came to thank you for having the courage to tell us the truth. You're not mad at me. At first I was shocked, but then I understood that you did what was right, even though it was hard. Ethan looked at Emma, who was hiding behind her father. And you, Emma? Are you mad at me? Emma came out from behind her father, approached Ethan, and to everyone's surprise, hugged him. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for helping me stop lying. You're welcome, replied Ethan, clearly moved by the gesture. Ethan, said Daniel, where are your parents? Do you have any relatives who take care of you? No, sir. My mother died 2 years ago. My father, I never knew who he was. I've lived here since then. 2 years? You've been alone here since you were 10? Yeah. There are some folks on the street who help me sometimes. Mrs. Dorothy, who sells pastries nearby, always saves one for me at the end of the day. But basically, it's just me. Daniel looked at Emma, who had tears in her eyes upon hearing Ethan's story. Ethan, said Daniel, how do you go to school? I go when I can. When I'm not too dirty, when I can clean up a bit in the public restroom at the park. But it's hard to keep up with classes when you don't have a place to study at home, right? What grade are you in? 5th grade. Or rather, I should be in 6th, but I repeated last year because I missed too much. Daniel was impressed. Ethan was only 12, had been living on the streets for 2 years, and yet was trying to maintain some educational normalcy. His intelligence and perceptiveness, shown when he exposed Emma's situation, were starting to make more sense. Ethan, Daniel finally said, how would you feel about living in a real house, having your own room, being able to take a hot shower every day, and focusing on your studies? The boy looked at Daniel with suspicion. Why are you asking me this? Because I want to offer you those things. I want you to come live with us. Ethan fell silent for several minutes, processing the offer. Emma looked at her father in surprise but said nothing. Are you serious? Ethan finally asked. Completely serious. You did us an enormous favor by telling the truth. More than that, you showed a courage and wisdom that many adults don't have. I think we can learn a lot from each other. And if it doesn't work out, what if you get tired of me? That won't happen, Daniel said firmly. But if for any reason you feel uncomfortable, you can always leave. It won't be a prison. It will be a home. Ethan looked at Emma. And you? What do you think? Emma hesitated for a moment. The idea of sharing her father's attention with another child stirred up those same old fears in her. But looking at Ethan, seeing his vulnerability and need, she felt something she had never experienced before, the desire to care for someone. I think it would be cool, she finally said. It would be cool to have a brother. Brother? Asked Ethan, surprised. Yeah, said Emma, gaining confidence. If you come live with us, it would be like you were my brother. And I've always wanted a brother. Ethan began to cry, tears that seemed to carry years of loneliness and abandonment. Are you sure? I don't have money to help with expenses. I don't have nice clothes. I don't know how to act in fancy places. Ethan, Daniel interrupted, you have something much more valuable than money. You have character. You showed honesty when it would have been easier to stay silent. You showed compassion when you could have been indifferent. Those are qualities you can't buy. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out, now continuing. That same afternoon, Ethan went home with Daniel and Emma. The first challenge was convincing him to take a bath and let them cut his hair. He was clearly uncomfortable with so much care after years of fending for himself. It's strange, said Ethan, as Daniel helped cut his hair. It's been so long since anyone took care of me that I don't even remember what it's like. You'll get used to it, said Emma, who was sitting in a nearby chair, watching the transformation. My dad is very affectionate when he wants to be. When I want to? Asked Daniel. Emma, I've always wanted to be affectionate with you. The problem was I didn't know how to show it. I know that now, said Emma. Sorry, Dad. I said something dumb. It wasn't dumb. You were right. I need to learn to show my feelings better. Ethan watched the interaction between father and daughter with fascination. For him, who had grown up without solid family references, witnessing a frank conversation about feelings was something completely new. Do you always talk about these things? Asked Ethan. No, admitted Daniel. Actually, we only started really talking a few days ago. Before I spent so much time working, we barely talked about anything. And that's why Emma pretended to be in the wheelchair. Yes, she wanted attention. She wanted me to stop working so much and spend more time with her. Ethan became thoughtful. That makes sense, he finally said. On the street, you learn that sometimes you need to do extreme things to survive. Emma did something extreme to get what she needed. You don't think it was wrong? Asked Emma. It was wrong, replied Ethan. But I understand why you did it. When you're desperate, sometimes you'll do anything. Ethan's premature wisdom constantly impressed Daniel. The boy had developed an understanding of human nature that came from years of observing behaviors in the struggle for survival. In the following days, Ethan adapted to the house with surprising ease. He had spent so much time dreaming of stability that when he finally found it, he embraced every aspect of it with genuine gratitude. The first night was difficult. Ethan woke up several times, clearly not used to sleeping in a soft, safe bed. Daniel found him once sitting at the bedroom window, looking out at the street. Can't sleep? Asked Daniel. It's too quiet here, said Ethan. On the street there's always noise, movement, you never completely relax. Here is so peaceful it makes me nervous. Want to talk for a bit? Ethan nodded, and they sat on the living room sofa. Ethan, can you tell me about your life before coming here? Only if you want to, of course. There's not much to tell, said Ethan. My mother worked as a cleaner in several places. We never stayed in one house for long. She got sick, went to the hospital, and didn't come back. And after? After the neighbors tried to help me for a while, but everyone had their own problems. I ended up on the street. I learned to get by, to find food, to hide when it was dangerous. Did you never think about looking for some institution, a shelter, something like that? Ethan gave a bitter laugh. Mr. Daniel, the shelters I knew weren't places you'd want to live. On the street, at least you have freedom, you have dignity. In shelters, it's different. How did you manage to go to school? The school principal, Mrs. Patricia, knew about my situation. She kind of turned a blind eye to my condition when I showed up. Sometimes she'd even save a plate of cafeteria food for me. She was the one who told me about Emma's situation. The principal knew about Emma. She knew she was sad because her father didn't show up to school events. She knew Emma always made excuses when asked why her father didn't come. Mrs. Patricia was surprised when she heard about the accident because she knew Emma as an active and happy child. Daniel made a mental note to talk with Mrs. Patricia. How many signs had he missed? How many people had noticed Emma's emotional need before she resorted to the extreme of faking a disability? Ethan, said Daniel, tomorrow we'll go to school to talk with Mrs. Patricia. We'll sort out your academic situation and see how we can help you make up for lost time. Do you think I can? I've been out of proper study for a long time. I'm sure you can. You're very smart, Ethan. You just need opportunity and support. The next morning, the three of them went to school together. Mrs. Patricia, an experienced educator of about 50, received them in her office with a mixture of curiosity and concern. Mr. Daniel, she said, I heard about Emma's situation. I must confess I always had suspicions that something wasn't right. Suspicions? Asked Daniel. Emma has always been a very active child, very smart. When I heard about the accident, I was surprised. And then, during these months, whenever I talked to her about the situation, there was something in her behavior that didn't fully convince me. Why didn't you come to me to talk? Mr. Morrison, with all due respect, how many times were you available for conversations at school? Whenever we tried to schedule meetings, you cancelled or sent the nanny in your place. Mrs. Patricia's observation was like a slap in the face to Daniel. Once again, he was faced with the consequences of his absence in Emma's life. You're right, admitted Daniel. I've failed as a father in many ways. What's important is that now you're working to correct the situation, said Mrs. Patricia kindly. And Ethan, how are you adjusting to the new life? Very well, Mrs. Patricia, answered Ethan. Mr. Morrison and Emma are being very kind to me. Mrs. Patricia, said Daniel, I'd like to talk about how we can help Ethan academically. He lost a lot of study time, but he's clearly very intelligent. I can do a full assessment of Ethan's academic situation, offered Mrs. Patricia. and I can recommend some private tutors if needed. What's important is that he has a stable environment to focus on his studies." "He has that now," said Emma, surprising the adults. "Ethan has his own room, has a place to study, has people to help him. He'll manage, I'm sure." The genuine affection she was developing for Ethan was evident in Emma's voice. In just a few days, she had gone from initial distrust to a full acceptance of the new family member. Mrs. Patricia observed the dynamic between the children with the experienced eye of someone who had seen thousands of families over the years. "Mr. Morrison," she said, "may I make a personal observation?" "Of course. In 30 years working with children, I've learned that they are very perceptive." Emma felt she needed more paternal attention and, in her own way, found a way to get it. Ethan, even while living on the streets, kept his moral values and had the courage to do what was right. Both children show strong character. You are very lucky. "I know that," said Daniel, "and I don't intend to waste that luck ever again." In the following weeks, the new family's life began to take shape. Ethan enrolled in the same school as Emma, started tutoring to make up for lost time, and slowly integrated into the household routine. Emma proved to be an excellent older sister, helping Ethan with the customs of the house, explaining TV shows, teaching games he'd never had the chance to learn. For her, taking care of Ethan awakened a sense of responsibility and maturity that had been dormant. "Dad," said Emma one night while helping Ethan with his math homework, "I never thought taking care of someone could feel so good." "How so?" "When I pretended to be in a wheelchair, you took care of me all the time. It was good to be cared for, but now I've discovered it's even better to care for someone." Ethan looked up from his homework. "Emma, you take very good care of me. Thank you very much." "You're welcome, Ethan. We're siblings now." Daniel watched these interactions with a heart full of pride and relief. The family dynamic was working better than he had dreamed, but there were still practical matters to resolve. The sale of his company was being finalized, and he needed to decide what direction to give his professional life. He had received several offers to work as a consultant, some very lucrative, but all demanding the same kind of full-time dedication that had caused the problems with Emma. "Emma, Ethan," he said during dinner one night, "I need your opinion on something." "What is it, Dad?" asked Emma. "Dad has received some job offers. Some would pay a lot of money, but would leave me less time to be with you. Others would pay less, but would allow me to be more present. What do you think?" Ethan and Emma looked at each other before answering. "Dad," said Emma, "we already have enough money. We have a nice house, food, clothes, a good school. What we didn't have was you. So choose the job that gives you more time with us." "Ethan, what do you think?" "I agree with Emma," said Ethan. "Mr. Daniel, I spent years without any material things, but what I missed most was having a family. Now I have that. It doesn't matter if we have less money as long as we have each other." The wisdom of the two children was decisive. Daniel chose a part-time consulting proposal, which would allow him to work from home most of the time and maintain flexible hours. A few months after the revelation of Emma's deception, Daniel received an unexpected call. It was Dr. Richard, the neurologist. "Mr. Daniel," said the doctor, "I'd like to talk to you about something. Do you have a few minutes?" "Of course, doctor." "I've been rethinking Emma's case and I'd like to propose something. What you went through, although it began with a lie, revealed important issues about family communication and emotional neglect. I'd like to know if you'd be willing to share your experience." "Share how?" "I'm organizing a symposium on children's mental health and family dynamics. I think your story could help other parents identify signs of emotional need in their children before extreme situations happen." Daniel talked with Emma and Ethan about the proposal. Both were receptive to the idea of helping other families, but Emma had a concern. "Dad, if we tell our story, people will know that I lied. They'll think I'm a bad kid." "Emma," said Daniel, "do you think you're a bad kid?" "No, not anymore. I think I was a desperate kid who made a wrong choice." "And do you think other kids might be feeling desperate like you felt?" "I think so." "Then our story can help those kids and their parents find better ways to deal with those feelings." Ethan, who had been listening to the conversation in silence, finally spoke. "Emma, When I lived on the street, I sometimes did things that weren't right to get food or shelter. But when I talk about it now, it's not to boast about the wrong things I did. It's to help other people understand that sometimes people make bad choices out of desperation, not out of malice. That's true, Emma agreed. And maybe if we tell our story, other parents will understand they need to pay more attention to their kids, and other kids will understand there are better ways to ask for attention. So, a few months later, Daniel, Emma, and Ethan participated in Dr. Richard's symposium. It was a transformative experience for the whole family. Emma, initially shy, found the courage to talk about her feelings of emotional abandonment and how she had arrived at the decision to fake a disability. Her honesty and maturity impressed everyone present. "I wanted my dad to know that I existed," Emma told the audience of doctors, psychologists, and parents. "He was always busy with things that seemed more important than me, so I thought if I was sick, he would have to take care of me." "And did it work?" asked a psychologist in the audience. "It worked too well," replied Emma. "My father stopped working so much, spent all his time with me, gave me all the attention I wanted. But I felt very guilty because I knew I was lying, and I also knew I was making him suffer. How do you feel now?" "Now I feel truly loved," said Emma, "because now my father spends time with me not because I'm sick, but because he wants to be with me. It's much better this way." Ethan also spoke during the presentation, offering the perspective of someone who had observed the situation from the outside before becoming part of the family. "When I saw Emma running at school, I was confused," said Ethan, "because I knew she was pretending, but I also understood why she was pretending. When you're a child and feel invisible to your parents, you'll do anything to make them see you." "Why did you decide to tell her father?" "Because I saw the suffering on his face. I saw that he truly loved his daughter but didn't know how to show it. I thought if they talked honestly, they could solve the problem without more lies." Daniel Morrison also shared his perspective, talking about how he had lost himself in work after his wife's death, and how he had mistakenly interpreted professional success as a form of paternal love. "I thought that by working hard, earning a lot of money, I was being a good father," said Daniel. "I thought I was securing Emma's future, but what she really needed was my present, not my future." The family's presentation had a great impact at the symposium. Several parents in the audience identified with the story, and some even approached Daniel afterward to share their own experiences with parental workaholism. One of the most emotional moments of the presentation was when Emma and Ethan spoke about how the situation had brought them together. "Ethan became my brother," said Emma, "and I discovered it's much better to have a real family based on truth than to have attention based on a lie." "And I discovered that a family isn't just about sharing the same blood," added Ethan. "It's about caring for each other, loving each other, being together in difficult times and in happy times." After the symposium, the family received dozens of letters from other parents who had attended the presentation. Many told similar stories of children who had developed extreme behaviors to get attention. Others spoke about how they had recognized patterns of emotional neglect in their own families. One letter in particular deeply touched Daniel. It was from a single mother from New York who worked 3 jobs to support 2 daughters. "Mr. Morrison," the letter said, "after hearing your story, I realized that my daughters were also asking for attention in ways I wasn't understanding. The oldest had started having constant nightmares. The youngest had developed a habit of feeling sick whenever I left for work. After your talk, I sat down with them and we talked honestly about our feelings. We found ways for me to show love and attention even with little time available. Thank you for having the courage to share such a personal story." Stories like this confirmed for Daniel that the decision to make their family experience public had been the right one. The pain and embarrassment they had gone through could now serve to help other families. But not all repercussions were positive. Some people in the community where they lived continued to judge the family harshly. There were parents at the school who questioned Daniel's trustworthiness, suggesting that a child capable of such an elaborate ruse should be viewed with suspicion. "Mr. Morrison," said one mother during a school meeting, "how can we trust that Emma isn't lying about other things? How do we know this whole story isn't just another act?" The question was asked in front of other families, causing an awkward silence. Emma was present and heard everything, visibly shaken. "Ma'am," Daniel Morrison replied calmly, "I understand your concern, but I can say that Emma learned, in the hardest way possible, about the consequences of lying. She is in therapy, we are in family therapy, and she has consistently demonstrated honesty and maturity. But how can we be sure?" "The same way we're sure about any child," intervened Mrs. Patricia, the principal, "by observing behaviors, maintaining open communication, creating environments where truth is valued more than perfection." After the meeting, Emma cried in the car, "Daddy, will there always be people who remember what I did? Will there always be people who won't trust me?" "Emma," said Daniel, "unfortunately some people will judge you by your past for a long time, but that shouldn't determine who you are or who you will become. What's important is that we, the people who truly know and love you, know who you really are." "But it's hard," said Emma. "I know it is. But remember what you said at the symposium, that you prefer to have a real family based on truth? Well, that's what we have now. And to build that, sometimes we need to face judgments from people who don't really know us." Ethan, who had been observing the conversation in silence, finally spoke. "Emma, when I lived on the street, people judged me just by my appearance. They thought I was dangerous, that I was going to steal something, that I was no good. But Mr. Morrison looked beyond the appearance and saw who I really was. The people who really matter do that. The others, well, their opinion doesn't matter that much." Ethan's wisdom, developed through difficult experiences, always surprised Daniel. The boy had become not only a son to him, but also a counselor, offering perspectives that only someone who had faced real adversity could have. As the months passed, the family's life settled into a healthy routine. Daniel worked mainly from home, was present for breakfast and dinner every day, kept up with the children's school activities, and had implemented many of the activities Emma had listed in her old notes. They had movie nights every Friday, went for walks in the park on Saturdays, cooked together on Sundays. Daniel had learned to value these simple moments more than any professional achievement. Emma thrived in this environment. Her grades at school improved, she developed new artistic talents, and most importantly, she had become a genuinely happy child. Therapy helped her process the guilt related to the deception and develop healthy ways to express her emotional needs. Ethan also flourished academically. With constant support and a stable environment, he quickly made up for lost time and was soon among the top students in his class. His dream was to become a doctor, inspired by Dr. Richard and how the neurologist had handled the whole situation. "Mr. Morrison," Ethan said one night while studying at the kitchen table, "can I ask you a question?" "Of course, Ethan. Why did you bring me home? I mean, what was the real reason?" Daniel stopped what he was doing and sat down next to Ethan. "Initially, it was gratitude. You had the courage to tell us a difficult truth that we needed to hear. But after you came to live here, I realized there were other reasons." "Which ones?" "You taught me things I didn't know I needed to learn. About resilience, about gratitude, about finding joy in simple things, and more importantly, you gave Emma the opportunity to be a big sister, to care for someone. That helped her grow emotionally. And now? What's the reason now? Now it's simply because you are my son, not a biological son, but a son of the heart. You are part of this family as much as Emma is." Ethan smiled, a wide smile that lit up his entire face. "Thank you for giving me a family, Mr. Daniel. Thank you for making our family more complete, Ethan." Approximately 1 year after the revelation of Emma's deception, the family received a phone call that brought an unexpected twist to the story. It was from a social worker named Sarah Wilson. "Mr. Daniel," said the woman on the phone, "my name is Sarah Wilson. I'm a social worker. I would like to speak with you about Ethan Morrison." Daniel felt his heart race. Could it be some legal problem related to the informal adoption of Ethan? "Of course, ma'am. What is this about?" "We have located an aunt of Ethan's. She has been looking for him for over a year, ever since she learned of his situation." The news left Daniel stunned. Ethan was at school, Emma was too. He would have to process this information alone first. "An aunt?" "Yes. sister of Ethan's late mother. She lives in Portland, works as a nurse, is married and has a daughter. When she learned Ethan was living on the streets, she began searching for him. It took time to find leads that led to you. Does she want to take Ethan? She would like to meet him, talk to him, understand the current situation. From what I understand, Ethan is well cared for with you, attending school, progressing academically. She has no intention of causing trouble. She just wants to meet her nephew. Daniel spent the rest of the day agonizing over how to break the news to Ethan and Emma. When they arrived from school, he decided to be direct and honest, as they had learned to be as a family. "Ethan, Emma," he said, gathering them in the living room. "I need to tell you something important. Ethan, a social worker, called me today. They found your aunt." Ethan was frozen for a few seconds. "My aunt? Which aunt?" "Your mother's sister. Apparently she has been looking for you for a long time." "I didn't know I had family," said Ethan, his voice almost inaudible. "My mother never talked about sisters. She wants to meet you, Ethan, but I want you to know that no matter what happens, you will always have a home here with us." Emma, who had been listening in silence, finally spoke. "Is Ethan leaving?" she asked, her words heavy with fear. "We don't know yet, Emma," Daniel said honestly. "First, Ethan will meet his aunt, they will talk, and then we'll see what's best for him." "But I don't want Ethan to leave," said Emma, beginning to cry. "He's my brother." Ethan went over to Emma and hugged her. "Emma, I don't want to leave either. This is my family now, but I've always wanted to know if I had relatives, you know? I always wondered if there was someone out there who could tell me about my mother, about our family." "You can meet your aunt and still live here," suggested Emma. "Aunts don't live with nephews, do they?" Ethan smiled through his tears. "Not necessarily, but Emma, even if I had to leave for some reason, you would always be my sister. Forever." The meeting with Ethan's aunt was scheduled for the following weekend. Susan Carter, 35 years old, arrived in Phoenix on a Friday night. Daniel had offered lodging, but she preferred to stay at a hotel to maintain neutrality in the situation. On Saturday morning, they met at a park near Daniel's house. Susan was a kind-looking woman with features that clearly resembled Ethan. She brought with her some old family photos and a few belongings that had belonged to Ethan's mother. "Ethan," said Susan, visibly emotional upon seeing him, "you look just like your mother when she was a child." "Are you really my aunt?" asked Ethan, still processing the situation. "Yes, I am. I am the older sister of Claire, your mother. I was living in Portland when you were born. I was starting my career as a nurse, and I lost contact with your mother for a few years. When I finally managed to find her again, she had passed away, and no one could tell me where you were." Susan showed the photos to Ethan. There were several of his mother as a child, some of the whole family together, and even some of Ethan as a baby that he had never seen. "Your mother talked about you a lot," said Susan. "In the last letters we exchanged, she told me about how smart you were, how you liked to study, how you dreamed of having a better life." Ethan looked at the photos with fascination. It was the first time he had seen pictures of his mother as a young woman, of himself as a baby, of a family he didn't know existed. "Aunt Susan," Ethan finally said, "why do you want to meet me now? After all this time?" "Because you are family," she replied simply. "Because your mother was my younger sister, and I promised to take care of you if anything ever happened to her. It took me a long time to find you, but I never gave up looking." Emma, who had observed the encounter in silence, finally approached. "Aunt Susan," she said, using the title naturally, "Ethan is my brother now. We take very good care of him." Susan smiled at Emma. "I can see that, dear. Ethan looks very happy and healthy. Mr. Daniel told me a little about how you met, about how he came to live with you. Are you going to take Ethan away?" Emma asked directly. "Emma," Daniel gently chided. "No, it's all right," said Susan. "It's a fair question. Emma, I didn't come here to take Ethan away. I came to meet him so he would know he has family, so we could have a relationship. But I can see he has found a wonderful family here." The relief on Emma's face was evident. For the rest of the day, Susan told stories about Ethan's family, about his mother's childhood, about family traditions Ethan had never known. She also talked about her own life in Portland, about her husband and her 8-year-old daughter. "You have a cousin," Susan said to Ethan. "Emily. She is 8 years old and is very curious to meet the cousin she never knew existed." "A cousin?" asked Ethan, surprised. "Yes, and she is very excited to meet you. She sent this letter." Susan handed Ethan a pink envelope with his name written in careful, childish handwriting. Inside was a drawing of 2 children playing, and a message. "Dear Cousin Ethan, I hope we can be friends. I have lots of cool games to show you. With love, Emily." Ethan looked at the drawing for a long time. "Can I meet her?" he finally asked. "Of course you can," said Susan. "We can arrange a visit, or she can come here too." Daniel observed the whole interaction with mixed feelings. He was happy Ethan had found biological family, but also worried about what it could mean for his own family. "Susan," Daniel said later, when the children went to play in the park, "may I ask what your intentions are regarding Ethan?" "Mr. Daniel, I want to be completely honest with you. When I started looking for Ethan, my intention was to take him to live with us in Portland. I felt guilty for not having found him sooner. I wanted to make up for the years he was alone." Daniel felt his stomach sink. "And now? Now, after meeting you, I see that Ethan has found something I could never give him. A family that chose him not out of obligation, but out of love. A family that welcomed him in a time of mutual need and grew together. So I would like to propose something different. I would like to be part of Ethan's life as an aunt, as extended family. To visit him regularly, have him spend holidays with us, maintain constant contact. But to leave him here, where he is clearly happy and loved." Daniel Morrison's relief was immense. "Susan, that would be wonderful. I believe Ethan would benefit greatly from having connections with his biological family, from knowing his roots. And I would benefit from having a relationship with my sister's son," said Susan. "Mr. Morrison, can I say something?" "Of course." "Claire would be so proud to know where Ethan ended up. She always dreamed of giving him a stable life, a quality education, a loving family. You have given Ethan everything my sister wanted for him." Susan's words moved Daniel deeply. "Ethan has given me far more than I have given him," said Daniel. "He taught me about family, about unconditional love, about what really matters in life." That night, Ethan talked at length with Daniel and Emma about what he had discovered during the day. "How do you feel, Ethan?" asked Emma. "Confused," admitted Ethan. "But a good kind of confused. Now I know where I come from. I know my mother had a sister who cared about me. I know I have a cousin. But I also know where I belong. Here, with you." "Are you sure?" asked Daniel. "Because if you want to get to know your aunt better, spend some time in Portland, we would understand." "Mr. Morrison," said Ethan, "Aunt Susan gave me something very important today. She gave me my history, my origin, my roots. But you gave me my present and my future. You gave me a home." "So can we keep being a family?" asked Emma. "Of course we can. It's just that now our family is a little bigger," said Ethan. "We have Aunt Susan and Cousin Emily too." And so it was. Susan returned to Portland but maintained regular contact with Ethan. Emily and Ethan corresponded frequently, and regular visits between the cities were arranged. Ethan spent 2 weeks in Portland during school holidays, getting to know his biological family better, but always eager to return home to Phoenix. Susan's arrival in Ethan's life also brought unexpected benefits for Emma. She gained an aunt by affinity and a cousin her own age, with whom she developed a close friendship. The families began planning joint vacations and holiday celebrations together. "Dad," said Emma one night, nearly 2 years after the whole wheelchair situation, "can I tell you a secret?" "Of course, sweetheart." "Sometimes I still feel guilty for what I did, for the lie, for making you suffer, for deceiving so many people." Daniel stopped what he was doing and sat down beside his daughter. "Emma, can I tell you a secret too?" "You can." "Sometimes I feel guilty too. Guilty for being so absent that you felt you needed to pretend to be sick to get my attention. Guilty for not noticing your cries for help before it reached that point." "So we both still feel guilty?" "Sometimes. But you know what I've learned? Guilt is only useful if it helps us make better decisions in the future, and I think that's what it did for both of us. How so? Your guilt helped you become a more honest, more empathetic, more careful person with others' feelings. My guilt helped me become a more present father, more attentive to your emotional needs. Emma was thoughtful. So maybe our guilt served some good purpose. I think so. But Emma, you don't need to carry that guilt forever. What you did was wrong, but you learned from the mistake, took responsibility, and became a better person because of it. And you, Dad, will you carry your guilt forever? No, because I learned that the best way to deal with guilt over past mistakes is to make sure I don't repeat them in the future. This conversation marked a turning point for both of them. Emma began to talk less about her guilt and more about her plans for the future. She had developed an interest in child psychology, inspired by her own experience and the therapy she had undergone. I want to help other children who feel the way I felt, she said. I want to help them find better ways to talk to their parents about what they're feeling. Ethan, in turn, kept his dream of becoming a doctor, but now with a specific focus on pediatrics and family medicine. I want to be the kind of doctor who can see beyond the symptoms, he would say. I want to be able to tell when a family is struggling, like Dr. Richard could see that our situation was more complicated than it seemed. 3 years after the revelation of Emma's deception, the family had settled into a stable and happy routine. Daniel worked as an independent consultant, which gave him the flexibility to be present in the children's lives. Emma had become a mature and responsible teenager, involved in volunteer activities at school. Ethan was thriving academically and had developed artistic talents that no one had discovered when he lived on the streets. Family therapy had ended, but they kept occasional sessions whenever they felt the need for outside help to deal with specific issues. The family had become an example of how crises can turn into opportunities for growth when faced with honesty and love. But life, as always, held new surprises. On a Thursday morning, Daniel received a phone call that left him stunned. "Daniel?" said a hesitant female voice on the phone. "Yes? Who is this?" "It's Jennifer. Jennifer Parker, your ex-wife." Daniel nearly dropped the phone. Jennifer, Emma's mother, had left 3 years before the wheelchair deception, unable to handle his emotional coldness after his first wife's death. She had moved abroad and cut off almost all contact with the family. "Jennifer," said Daniel, still processing the shock. Where are you?" "I'm in Canada. I arrived yesterday." "Daniel, I need to see Emma. I need to talk to you all." Daniel looked around the house where Emma was doing homework at the kitchen table and Ethan was reading on the sofa. The peaceful life they had built was about to face new turbulence. "Jennifer, you can't just show up after so many years and—" "I know," she interrupted, her voice full of emotion. "I know I have no right to just come back. But Daniel, I made a terrible mistake when I left. I abandoned my daughter because I was angry with you, because I couldn't handle our family dynamic. But Emma had nothing to do with it." "Where have you been all these years?" "In Canada, working, trying to rebuild my life, trying to forget." But I could never forget Emma. And when I found out through mutual acquaintances about what happened with the wheelchair, I realized my daughter had suffered so much that she resorted to faking a disability. Daniel felt as if he were reliving the shock of that afternoon in the park years ago. "How did you find out?" "Dr. Richard. We met when Emma was little, when she had pneumonia. He contacted me when he learned you were participating in symposiums on family dynamics. He told me about the situation, about how you had recovered as a family." "And what do you want now?" "I want to apologize to Emma. I want to take responsibility for my part in what happened. And I want to try to be a mother again, if she'll let me." Daniel closed his eyes, trying to process the implications of all that. "Jennifer, Emma built a life. We built a family. You can't just come back and expect everything to be like it was before." "I know that. I'm not asking to go back as if nothing happened. I'm just asking for a chance to meet who my daughter has become, to ask for forgiveness for the years I lost, to maybe be part of her life in some way. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. "Dad," called Emma from the kitchen. "Who are you talking to?" Daniel covered the phone. "It's a work call, sweetie. I'm almost done." "Jennifer," said Daniel, returning to the phone. "I need to talk to Emma and Ethan about this before making any decision. I can't just decide on my own." "Ethan?" "It's a long story. Emma has an adoptive brother now. Like I said, our lives have changed a lot." "I understand. Daniel, can I ask you a favor? Just one meeting, a conversation. If Emma doesn't want to see me after that, I will respect it and return to Canada. I need to talk to her first. Of course, I'm staying at the Grand Plaza Hotel. I can wait as long as necessary." After hanging up, Daniel stood in the living room for a few minutes, trying to decide how to approach the subject with Emma and Ethan. How to explain that the mother who had abandoned Emma was back, wanting a new chance. He decided to be direct and honest, as they always were as a family now. "Emma, Ethan," he called, "can you come here to the living room? I need to talk to you about something important." The two children approached, immediately noticing the seriousness in Daniel's tone. "What happened, Dad?" asked Emma. "Emma, I just got a call from your mother, from Jennifer." Emma's face instantly paled. "My mother?" she whispered. "Yes. She's in the US, in Phoenix. She wants to talk to us, to see you." Emma was silent for several minutes, processing the information. Ethan, sensing the tension of the moment, sat beside her on the sofa. "Is she coming back to stay?" Emma finally asked. "I don't know, sweetie. She said she wants to talk, to ask for forgiveness, maybe try to be part of your life again. But she abandoned me," said Emma, her voice beginning to tremble. "She left when I needed a mother the most." "I know, sweetie, and you have every right to be angry." "I'm not angry," said Emma, surprising Daniel. "I'm confused. All these years, I sometimes imagined what it would be like if she came back. Sometimes I dreamed she would come back. But now that it might really happen, I don't know how I feel." Ethan, who had observed the conversation in silence, finally spoke. "Emma, can I share something with you?" "Of course, Ethan." "When Aunt Susan showed up, I was confused too. It was something I always wanted, to know family, but when it happened, I was afraid it would change everything here at home." "And did it?" "It did, but for the better. I gained more family, more people who love me. But the most important thing is that I didn't lose you." Emma looked at Ethan with gratitude. "Do you think I should talk to her?" "I think you should do what your heart tells you, and know that whatever you decide, your dad and I will be here to support you." Daniel was impressed once again by Ethan's maturity. "Emma," said Daniel, "the decision is completely yours. If you want to see your mother, I'll arrange the meeting. If you don't, I'll talk to her and explain. There's no pressure from any side. And if I want to see her, but I don't know what to say, then you can start by saying exactly that you don't know what to say." Emma was thoughtful for several minutes. "Dad, can I ask some questions before deciding?" "Of course, honey. Why did she leave back then?" Daniel hesitated. How to explain to a teenager the complexities of a relationship that had ended mainly because of his own emotional coldness? "Emma, when your first mother died, I became very emotionally closed off. Jennifer tried to help me, tried to bring us together as a family, but I was so focused on work and so closed off with my feelings that I ended up pushing her away too. She couldn't handle that situation and left." "So it was because of you?" "It was because of our relationship, of how we both handled problems poorly. But Emma, that doesn't justify her leaving you. Adults have problems between them, but children shouldn't pay for that. Why does she want to come back now?" "From what she told me, because she heard the wheelchair story and realized you had suffered a lot. I think she realized the mistake she made by leaving." "What if I agree to talk to her and then regret it?" "Then you can end the conversation at any time. You can decide not to see her again. Emma, you have total control over this situation." Emma looked at Ethan. Ethan, what would you do in my place? Honestly, I think I would talk to her, even if it was just to talk about how I felt when she left. Sometimes we need to talk about these things to be able to move on. Okay, said Emma finally. I want to talk with her. But I want you and Ethan to be there, at least at the beginning. Of course, honey, whatever makes you feel most comfortable. The meeting was scheduled for the following Saturday, in the same park where Ethan had revealed the wheelchair hoax years before. Emma chose the location, saying it was an important place for the family, a place where they had faced difficult truths. Jennifer arrived punctually, visibly nervous. Daniel saw her from afar and was surprised by the changes. She was thinner, had some wrinkles that weren't there before, her hair was shorter, but mainly there was a sadness in her eyes that he had never seen when they were married. Daniel, she said, approaching hesitantly. Jennifer, he replied, keeping a neutral tone. And you must be Ethan, said Jennifer, looking at the boy. Daniel told me a little about you on the phone. Hi, Ethan replied politely, but staying close to Emma in a protective stance. And Emma, said Jennifer, her voice cracking slightly. My daughter. Emma looked at her mother for several seconds before answering. Hi, she said simply. They sat at a picnic table, the tension in the air almost palpable. Jennifer clearly didn't know how to start the conversation. Emma, she said finally, I don't even know where to begin. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for leaving, for abandoning you, for missing years of your life. Why did you leave? Emma asked directly. Jennifer looked at Daniel, then back at Emma. Because I was angry with your father, because I felt invisible in our home, ignored, unloved, and instead of trying to solve our problems, instead of fighting for our family, I ran away. But I had nothing to do with your problems. No, you didn't. And that was the most wrong part of what I did. You were a child. It was my responsibility to take care of you regardless of the problems I had with your father. Emma was silent for a few moments. Do you know what I did with the wheelchair? I do, Dr. Richard told me. And what did you think? Jennifer took a deep breath before answering. I thought it was a desperate demonstration from a child who was suffering, and I was devastated to learn that my daughter had reached that point. Devastated why? Because part of the suffering that led you to do this was caused by me leaving, because if I had stayed, perhaps you wouldn't have felt so alone. Emma began to cry, not tears of sadness, but tears of relief. I was so afraid that you had left because you didn't love me anymore, she said between sobs. Emma, my love, said Jennifer, instinctively moving closer. I have always loved you. Even far away, even when I made the wrong decision to leave, I never stopped loving you. I left you, but not because I didn't love you. I left because I was lost, confused, making bad decisions. Then why didn't you come back sooner? Because I was ashamed, because I didn't know how to ask forgiveness for something so serious, because I was afraid you would hate me. I don't hate you, said Emma. I missed you, I got angry sometimes, but I never hated you. Daniel Morrison watched the conversation between mother and daughter with conflicting emotions. He was happy to see Emma having the chance to reconcile with Jennifer, but also worried about what this could mean for the stability they had built. Jennifer, Daniel interrupted gently, Emma needs to know what your intentions are. Are you coming back permanently? Do you want to take Emma with you? Do you want to try to rebuild our family? Daniel, I would like to try to rebuild a relationship with Emma. But I understand that I can't just come back and expect things to be as they were before. You have built a life, a family. I have no right to disrupt that. What does that mean in practice? Asked Emma. It means I would like to be part of your life gradually, at a pace you feel comfortable with. Maybe we start by seeing each other occasionally, talking on the phone, you updating me about your school, your interests. And where are you going to live? I'm thinking of staying in Canada, maybe here in Phoenix. I can resume my career as a journalist here, but only if you want me to stay nearby. Emma looked at Daniel and Ethan before answering. I do, she said finally. I want to try to have you in my life again, but slowly, like you said. And you? Asked Jennifer, looking at Daniel and Ethan. How do you feel about this? Ethan answered first. "I think Emma deserves to have a mother in her life, and if you want to try to be that mother now, I think that's a good thing." "Ethan," said Jennifer, "I know you don't know me, and I understand if you don't want me to be part of your life, but I want you to know that I really admire what you did for this family." "What did I do?" "You had the courage to tell a difficult truth they needed to hear, and then you became part of this family, helped heal it. Daniel told me how you brought important perspectives to them." Ethan was visibly moved by Jennifer's words. "Thank you," he said simply. Daniel finally spoke. "Jennifer, I won't pretend this is easy for me. Part of me still holds hurt over the way you left. But I see how Emma is responding to you, and I can see that your presence could be positive for her. So, if Emma wants you around, I will support that." "What about us, Daniel?" asked Jennifer hesitantly. "I don't know yet," Daniel answered honestly. "A lot has changed. I've changed, you've changed, our family has changed. I think we need to get to know each other again before thinking about anything beyond co-parenting. I understand, and I appreciate your honesty." In the following months, Jennifer gradually reintegrated into Emma's life. They started with weekly meetings, then began seeing each other more frequently. Emma introduced Jennifer to her school friends, her hobbies, her dreams for the future. Jennifer also developed a genuine relationship with Ethan, impressed by his maturity and wisdom. She often said that Ethan had been an angel in her family's life, appearing exactly when everyone needed to learn important lessons about honesty and love. The family dynamic slowly adjusted to accommodate Jennifer's presence. She rented an apartment near Daniel's house, found work as a freelance journalist, and established her own routine in Phoenix. "Emma," said Jennifer one afternoon as they walked together in the park, "can I ask you a difficult question?" "Go ahead. Do you forgive me for leaving?" Emma stopped walking and looked at her mother. "Mom, I learned something important when I pretended to be in the wheelchair." "What?" "I learned that sometimes people do wrong things when they're desperate or in a lot of pain. It doesn't make the things right, but it means we can understand why they happened." "And does that apply to me?" "I think so. You did a wrong thing when you left, but I understand you were suffering and desperate too." "So you forgive me?" "I forgive you. But more important than that, now I love you again. Not in the same way I loved before, because we're both different people now, but I love you in a new way." Jennifer began to cry. "Thank you for giving me this second chance, Emma. I promise I'll never waste it again." "I know you won't, because now we know how to talk about our feelings. We know to ask for help when we need it. We know that family is about being together in the hard times." Emma's reconciliation with Jennifer had unexpected positive effects on the whole family. Ethan felt even more secure in his position, seeing that families can expand and reconfigure without anyone being left behind. Daniel discovered that having Jennifer back as Emma's co-mother reduced some of the parental pressures he felt, allowing him to be even more present for both children. 2 years after Jennifer's return, the family had found a new balance. Emma was in her first year of high school, excelling academically and involved in volunteer projects. Ethan was preparing for college entrance exams, maintaining excellent grades, and planning to study medicine. Daniel had expanded his consulting business and begun giving lectures on family dynamics and communication, often telling his own family's story as an example of how crises can transform into growth. Jennifer had established herself professionally as a journalist, specializing in family and social issues, using her own experiences to inform her work. One Sunday evening, during a family dinner that now included Jennifer, Susan, who was visiting with Emily, Emma made an observation that perfectly summarized the journey they had traveled. "You know what's funny?" she said, looking around the table full of people she loved. "What?" asked Ethan. "When I pretended to be in the wheelchair, all I wanted was a family that would pay attention to me. Now I look at this table and see I have a family much bigger and more complicated than I ever imagined possible." "Complicated how?" asked Daniel, smiling. "Well, I have a reformed workaholic dad," said Emma, pointing at Daniel. "A mom who left and came back," she continued, pointing at Jennifer. "A brother who taught me about courage and honesty," she said, pointing at Ethan. "A big-hearted aunt who shows that family isn't just about blood," she said, pointing at Susan. And a cousin who teaches me it's possible to be happy even when life is complicated, she finished, pointing at Emily. And what do you think of all that? Asked Jennifer. I think our family is weird, complicated, and completely imperfect, said Emma. And I think it's exactly the way it should be. Ethan raised his glass of juice. A toast to our strange, complicated, and imperfect family. Everyone raised their glasses, laughing and agreeing. And a special toast, added Daniel, to the courage of being honest with each other, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard, corrected Emma. That night, after everyone had left, Daniel, Emma, and Ethan sat in the living room for their traditional Sunday night talk. Dad, said Emma, can I tell you one more secret? Always, replied Daniel. Sometimes I still have nightmares about being stuck in the wheelchair, about having to pretend forever. It's normal, sweetheart. It was a very intense experience. But you know what calms me down when I wake up from those nightmares? What? I remember that now I can just come here to the living room and talk to you and Ethan about anything that's bothering me. I remember I don't have to pretend anymore to get attention, because you love me even when I'm annoying, even when I mess up, even when I'm not perfect. Emma, said Ethan, you know we would love you, even if you really needed a wheelchair, right? Even if you were really sick, even if you had any problem. I know, that's what makes all the difference. Before I thought I needed to be special or need special care to be loved. Now I know I'm loved simply for being who I am. Daniel hugged both of his children. You two have taught me about unconditional love, he said. Emma, even when you lied, even when you caused all that trouble, I never stopped loving you. And Ethan, from the first day I brought you home, you became my son in my heart. And we learned about unconditional love from you too, Dad, said Emma. We learned that true family is the one that sticks together, even when things get tough. 5 years after the wheelchair hoax, on a sunny October Sunday, the family organized a special party. It was simultaneously a celebration of Ethan's graduation from medical school, Emma's acceptance into psychology school, and 5 years of life together as a family. The party was held in the same park where Ethan had revealed the truth about Emma years before. Present were Dr. Richard and his family, Mrs. Patricia, the school principal, Susan and Emily, several family friends, and even some of the people who had been affected by the original hoax and who now understood the full story. During the party, Daniel gave a brief speech. 5 years ago, he said, our family went through a crisis that at the time seemed devastating. Emma made a desperate decision to get attention. I faced my own failures as a father, and Ethan appeared in our lives as an angel of honesty. If someone had told me back then that 5 years later we would be here, celebrating our children's academic achievements, with our family expanded and happy, I wouldn't have believed it. But I learned that crises can be opportunities if faced with honesty, love, and the courage to change. I learned that family isn't about perfection, it's about being there for each other. Emma taught me that true attention isn't just being physically present, but being emotionally available. Ethan taught me that family can be chosen as much as biological. Jennifer taught me that people can change, grow, and deserve second chances. So today we celebrate not only the academic achievements, but mainly the achievement of becoming a true family based on honesty, communication, and unconditional love. Emma asked to speak next. When I was 10 years old, she said, I thought the only way to have love was by pretending to need special care. Today, at 18, I know that true love is the kind we receive simply for existing. I chose to study psychology because I want to help other children and families discover this without going through the difficulties we faced. I want to be someone who helps families communicate before crises happen. And I want to say thank you. Thank you to my father for learning to love me the way I needed to be loved. Thank you to my mother for having the courage to come back and ask for forgiveness. Thank you to Ethan for being brave enough to tell a difficult truth and for becoming the best brother I could have asked for. Ethan gave the final speech. 6 years ago, I was a boy living on the streets, with no family, no hope of having a normal life, he said. Today, I am a licensed doctor. I have a family that loves me and I have plans for the future. But what changed my life wasn't getting off the streets or having access to education. What changed my life was learning about unconditional love, about belonging, about what it truly means to have a family. I will begin my specialization in family medicine because I learned through our story that physical health is intimately connected with family emotional health. I want to be the kind of doctor who can see the family dynamics behind physical symptoms. And I want to say thank you for choosing me to be part of this strange, complicated, and perfect family. At the end of the party, when all the guests had left, Daniel, Emma, Ethan, and Jennifer sat on the bench where Ethan had made his revelation years earlier. "Look," said Emma, pointing to the pink wheelchair leaning against a nearby tree. "Why did you bring it here?" asked Ethan. "Because today we are going to symbolically let it go," said Emma. "We are going to donate it to a child who really needs it, as we always should have done." "How do you feel about that?" asked Jennifer. "I feel free," said Emma. "For years this chair represented my lie, my guilt, my shame. Today it can represent hope and mobility for a child who truly needs it." They took the chair to a children's rehabilitation center, where it was received with gratitude by a family with an 8-year-old girl who had been diagnosed with cerebral palsy. "This chair has a special story," Emma told the girl. "It taught my family about true love. I hope it brings you much joy and adventure." End of story. Now tell us what you thought of this story and where you are listening from. If you have something to share with us, leave it in the comments with sincere words. Do you believe Emma made the right decisions in the end? We would love to read your opinion. Thank you so much for your company. Don't forget to leave your like and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other emotional stories.